Welcome back to Morbidly Bewitched and happy spooky season. It is October. In the last video, I carried out the final parts of my experiment on the Sausage Brothers. Now, if you want to check that out, have a little look at that. But in the meantime, I'm going to take you back in time for this episode to the mid-19th century and the father of embalming and where it all began for Western civilization as we know it. So stay tuned. Embalming, a word that instantly conjures up images of Egypt, the pyramids, mummies, and no doubt the springboard for the practices across the globe. However, that's something I'm going to discuss at a later date. For this episode, I'm going to be talking about the here and now, because our embalming practices are completely different to the embalming practices of Egypt. So where did it all begin? Now, for me to do this, I'm going to have to give you a rough timeline. Grab your cup of tea, hit the lights, and relax as I take you on a journey through history. The timeline of people that brought the art of embalming to Western civilization will no doubt have to start with a gentleman, an English gentleman called William Harvey, a physician. From 1578 to 1657, Harvey goes down in history as the first man who truly discovered and mapped out the human circulatory system and its main function, delivering blood throughout the entire body, which no doubt is completely relevant to the practices of embalming. Then came along a Scottish physician and anatomist called William Hunter. He was 1718 to 1783. He brought recognition to the art of preservation, which enabled his work to be displayed as a specialist in dissection, eventually opening a famous theatre of anatomy in 1768. Now let's skip across Europe to a Parisian pharmacist, chemist and inventor called Jean-Nicolas Ganal, 1791 to 1852, who discovered that by using the circulatory system in humans and with a pump, he could introduce a solution of aluminium salts throughout the system that would not only aid with the entire look of the body, but also acted as a preservation agent. He was the first person to offer these services to the public at a small fee. Now, with that interesting little timeline put in place, let's jump back across the pond to America, where the true father of embalming has just been born. Dr. Thomas Holmes, 1817 to 1900. Was born in New York and attended the Columbia University of Physicians and Surgeons, furthering his career by becoming an assistant to the coroner in the 1850s. Holmes recognised the issue of dead bodies and decomposition, especially in the medical field, for the purpose of study, so set about inventing his own cocktail of compounds and ended up with a delightful arsenic solution. Our good old buddy, August Wilhelm von Hofmann, had not yet discovered formaldehyde's use in preservation. So yeah, we started off with arsenic. And Holmes's timing could not have been better, with the Civil War looming in the background. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, Dr. Holmes enrolled as a captain in the Union Army Medical Corps and was stationed in Washington, D.C. Not long into his enrollment, one Colonel Elmer Ellsworth was shot and killed while removing a Confederate flag from a hotel rooftop in Virginia. This colonel happened to also be a very good friend of President Lincoln. So Dr. Holmes seen his opportunity and offered to embalm his body for free. Holmes was no doubt quite excited at the prospect of showing off his brand new technique and set to work straight away preparing the colonel's body. The body was then put on public display for his funeral and viewed by hundreds of people, receiving endless compliments of just how good the colonel looked. Because of these results, President Lincoln grew extremely interested in the practice, and he commissioned Dr. Holmes to train embalming surgeons so that the technique could be carried out on all officers and soldiers who fell during battle for their average 4-week delay on getting back home so that they could have a good standard Christian funeral. This, of course, turned into a lucrative business with big money to be made. Postman. Makeshift embalming tents were popping up, quite literally everywhere. And in 1861, the charge would have been $80 for an officer and $30 for an enlisted man. Now you can imagine this kind of money in 1861. This was expensive stuff. And it was not uncommon to see 3 or 4 embalmers scouring the fields of battle and arguing and fighting over who could get to embalm an officer because that would have brought in more money. Yes, the demand was so high, and with so many shady characters scuttling about the battlefields, the War Office Department had to put out a general order stating that only licensed embalmers could carry out their services. The basic crude procedure for the embalming on the field was not really an art form, not the way we do it today. It required 4 ounces of arsenic acid, 1 gallon of water mixed together, a basic pump and tubing system to get it into the body, a pipe with a spike on the end of it to release gases from the abdomen, and sawdust was then used to pack all orifices and the chest cavity to avoid leakages and dry out any of those other bodily fluids. After the war, there was an initial decline in the request for embalming. Demand was not as high. However, with most of those surgeons turning into permanent morticians, charging up to $100 per body, this turned into something that was requested by middle to upper class society, and no doubt paved the way for the technique in the funeral industry. As for good old Dr. Holmes, the father of embalming, well, he returned home an extremely wealthy man. But he didn't do too much embalming after that. When he did, again, he charged $100 per body. And he patented his pump and his embalming solution, selling it for $3 per gallon already mixed up for sale. Back then, that was still quite a lot of money, so it was a lucrative business. And he ran that alongside another passion of his, which was quite a strange combination, and that was home-brewed beer. Holmes loved talking about his accomplishments during the Civil War, and why shouldn't he? It was a heck of an achievement. However, boasted that he embalmed himself well over 4,000 corpses, and decided to decorate his home with those artifacts, with embalmed bodies in closets and preserved heads on tables, you know, just for friends and family coming around. He reportedly went insane, no doubt due to the excessive arsenic exposure over the years, and spent the rest of his days in and out of asylums. He also ironically requested emphatically not to be embalmed upon his own demise, which occurred on the 10th of January 1900. Thus, the art of embalming was born into Western civilization, and, fun fact, Lincoln was the first president to be embalmed. Now, I'm going to deviate slightly for my next episode. You're going to see me a tad sooner. With October and Halloween being my favourite time of year, I have to do a Halloween special, of course. So join me on the 31st of October where I will talk you through a couple of eerie true stories. Please subscribe, and I'll see you soon.